And welcome everybody to another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Sung. I am joined by Eric Wiedeke. I am joined by Alfredo Arteaga of the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast. So we've got ourselves a lot to talk about today. The biggest news, of course, is that it is projected, not 100% confirmed yet, only 99.9999% confirmed at this point, that Tua Tagovailoa will be returning to play against the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to talk about the ramifications of that, whether it's too little too late, or if there is still time for a turnaround, and if there is, just how much will Tua factor into that? Just how much can he rescue this offense from the abysmal state that it's currently in? We're going to get into all that, but before that, really quick, just want to go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at jerseys305.com.
Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We've got a great new sponsor that fits with us perfectly. It's called jerseys305.com. That's jerseys305.com. This is your home for dead stock and vintage jerseys from the Heat, Panthers, Dolphins, Marlins, and the other local teams. Their mission was born from a passion for wearing jerseys of the old styles and the past players. Jerseys 305 aims to make every fan stand out from the crowd with unique pieces that you don't commonly see anymore. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but not today. And Jerseys 305 was created by the fans, for the fans. They're diehards just like you. In fact, they're probably listening to this episode right now. So check them out, Jerseys 305, their partnership with 5 Reasons Sports, celebrating with a 10% discount on the next purchase using the code 5 at checkout. Unlock your exclusive savings on the entire vintage collection.
And again, that's jerseys305.com. Use the promo code 5. You get 10% off your order when you do that. And also, we have a new sponsor, courtesy of the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast. You can go ahead and check them out at thompsoncigar.com. So you can use the promo code 3 yards and you can get 20% off your entire order over $75. So we've got some good stuff over there. Make sure you go ahead and check that out. Again, that is Thompson. That's THOMPSONCIGAR.com. Use the promo code 3 yards, the number 3 yards, and get 20% off your entire order over $75. All right. So let's get into this, folks. Obviously, what we watched on this past Sunday, I had this just horrible feeling in my gut after the missed field goal that things were just going to go sour very quickly. I was hoping against all hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd be able to pull it off, but they did not, which is funny because really Mike McDaniel did almost everything we wanted him to do. He ran the ball 40 times. We talked about this pretty much during post game. We had I had Coach Eric Smith on with me. We went ahead and we talked about it. They ran the ball, and they ran the ball effectively. So for all the talk about EPA and all that stuff that we were talking about, ultimately the Indianapolis Colts gave up almost 200 yards rushing. So there was something to the weakness and the vulnerability in their defense. And even still, after all that, it just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. The defense, they were exhausted. You could tell that they were exhausted at the tail end of that game. There was just no gas left in the tank, and they couldn't even stop Anthony Richardson, who, by the way, the fact that the Colts won and their quarterback was just abysmal. Like, all he had to do was just throw a couple of decent throws, and that was all it took to beat the Dolphins. Just for some clarification here, Anthony Richardson, who is the super athletic running quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. Let's make no mistake about that. He ran a lot more effectively than he threw anything. He ran, Anthony Richardson, for 14 carries and 56 yards, which means he was the leading rusher for the Colts that game. Anthony Richardson, as a passer, he went 10 for 24 and 129 yards. That is horrible. That's Tim Tebow levels of throwing. That's bad. That's very bad. And so, if even that was enough, because the Dolphins offense was just that stagnant, they could not throw the football for the life of them. Tyler Huntley went 7 of 13 for 87 yards. They did get one touchdown. Thank God for Jonnu Smith. And I feel like they really need to get the ball to him more now that Tua is going to be coming back. He ended up hurting his shoulder. He didn't come back. Tim Boyle took over for the rest of the game, went 8 for 13, 74 yards. And it's strangely bizarre to me. And maybe Eric, maybe you disagree, and I'll let Alf chime in as well. Bizarrely enough, Tim Boyle, for all the flaws that he has, and obviously he's not, I wouldn't call him a good quarterback. He's the only guy that looked even remotely competent throwing the football that whole game. And both times he came in, it was near the tail end of the game. And weirdly, Boyle was able to actually do something with the football. I don't know how, and I don't know why he didn't get a chance to actually prove that he should be a starter if that was the case. I understand that Tyler Huntley has a higher ceiling than a Tim Boyle does, but Boyle could throw. Huntley can't, apparently. So we're going to get into that just right about now. Eric, I want to get your thoughts on what we saw in the Colts game. You were actually chiming in from the chat because you weren't available to actually participate in the show. And I know that there were some thoughts that you wanted to get out. Let's go ahead and hear you now.
So a couple of things. I'm going to be really difficult on Mike McDaniel tonight. And I think it's deserved at this point. But I've had some time to kind of flesh out my thoughts so that I can deliver a case without sounding like I'm just, raving lunatic about this whole thing. The Dolphins ran for 188 yards. That's all well and good. Truthfully speaking, Devon Achane had a really good game, and I like what he brings to this offense, but they run for 250 if the majority of those carries go to Jalen Wright and Raheem Mostert. They do, because those guys were running harder. They break more tackles. Additionally, I will challenge that, and I don't mean to come off as a Tyler Huntley defender, but the best pass thrown by either quarterback in that game was down the sideline to Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill doesn't see it. That's the best pass either quarterback threw in that game. You're bludgeoning them in the fourth quarter. You're going 8, 9, 10 yards a pop. 1st and 10 from the 13, and you hand it to Alec Ingold. And that's not to say that Alec Ingold is a bad player, but it's just Mike McDaniel has this tendency that when something's working for him, he tries to anticipate the counterpunch. And sometimes the answer is there is no counterpunch because they can't counter. They can't. And the Colts could not counter the Dolphins just lining the ball up and running down their throats with their running backs. Colts had no answers for that. And Mike McDaniel went away from it. Again, the ball was punched, whatever. It happens. I get it. But that decision is just, it's not a decision he can afford to make at this point with the eyes on him. Raheem Mostert, his first fumble. Egregious that you don't even throw the challenge flag. They didn't use a single challenge in that game. I thought his knee was down when I was looking at the replays. I found it odd that they didn't even think to go to the booth and look at it themselves, but that's neither here nor there. We can talk about the quarterback play, and it's certainly worth talking about. I like the Jonnu Smith stuff. I love the Jonnu Smith stuff. I'm a big Jonnu Smith guy. But I look at this and again, you're looking at another game plan where Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, whether it's the quarterback or whether it's by design, were not involved. And that's really what disappointed me was after New England, when you had at least some semblance of involvement from Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that they went from, admittedly still minimal involvement for their standards to literally no contribution during the game. And it's maddening because this isn't a Colts defense that's very good. It's just not, period. Whether it's the secondary, whether it's against the pass, whether it's against the run, they're not very good. And the fact that the Dolphins just could not take advantage of that, whether it's for any variety of reasons, penalties, taking things away from them, the pre-snap penalties showed themselves up again. It's just, again, and this is off of and the worst part is this is off of a bye week. You had an extra week to prepare for this, and this is what it was. The game plan when it comes to running the football was good, 80% of it. loved it, liked it, fine. But you don't involve Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. You go away from what's working for you in a critical moment of the game, because I'm telling you right now, if the Dolphins score in that drive, they win. Period. Point blank. Period. They score a touchdown there, they win. Not to say that they would have gotten 7, but it was very much on the table at the time the way they were running the football. They would have won. And so that's the real frustrating part for me. And we'll get into the Tua aspect of this later on. That's just how I kind of felt about the game in itself on Sunday. Again, that's a Mike McDaniel thing. He's got to be better.
So, Alf, I want to go ahead and pivot to you now. You during the game in the OnlyFins server, which, by the way, it's discord.gg/OnlyFins, $3 a month to get the best Dolphins talk on the internet. Some hope was dying in that server. Like, I was watching people in real time, just like, nope, this season's over and done with. We're done. We can't deal with it anymore. The good vibes channel was, even that channel was very much not vibing very well at that point. So I wanted to go ahead and pivot to you. What were your thoughts in the immediate aftermath of watching what we watched? Were you looking at it from a hopeless standpoint, or were you trying to hold on to your sanity, for lack of a better term?
Well, you got to watch something like that a little bit analytically, and you kind of saw what it looks like to play with one hand tied behind your back. And when you have 2 turnovers, and that missed field goal, by the way, that essentially is like a turnover, because if you go for it and you don't get it, they get the ball at the 37-yard line. You kick the field goal and you don't get it. You're only trying to tie it, but then you give them the ball at the 44-yard line. It's a 7-yard. It's almost a 1 first down head start on your next drive. So you could essentially say 3 turnovers, and one led directly to a short field and points. The other one led to a short field and points, and the other one took points off the board. So, the Dolphins, not only were they completely unlucky, but whenever you hear somebody say, oh, they shot themselves in the foot, the Dolphins didn't only shoot themselves in the foot. They were playing one-handed. This is what a game looks like when you play with no quarterback. If you watch, and I don't know what it is with these guys, because they called some really simple stuff, some 2-route stuff, some combination stuff that, man, you learn this stuff in high school. And these guys were wide open. But for whatever reason, Tyler Huntley would not throw the football. It looked to me like if he was playing like, I'm not screwing this up. I know the game plan, and I know the game plan is really conservative, and we're just essentially going to try to run the clock out on these guys as soon as the game starts. I'm not screwing this up. But at some point, you have to make a play, especially when the play is there for you to be made. And, it was as disappointing a loss as this team has had in the McDaniel era, because you could point to a few things that were his fault. Even the fumble by Ingold, it's a terrible call. Like, what the hell are you doing calling a fullback dive on 1st and 10 at the 13-yard line when you got down there just handing the ball to Jalen Wright? How about an end around to Waddle? How about an end around to Tyreek Hill? How about a screen to Tyreek Hill? There's so many inside the red zone starters on 1st and 10 from the 13-yard line. There's just so many that you have in your playbook that I can't believe that on the first play, it's a fullback dive. But then when you watch the film, you realize, oh, I see what McDaniel's thinking here. He saw this front, he anticipated this front, and he called the fullback dive because he wants to stay on schedule, because he knows there's a free 4 yards there. But what happens? You watch the play on film, and I don't know why he did this, but Engel refuses to run. That's dive 32. Okay, he's supposed to go in the 2-hole, which is to the right side of the center. For whatever reason, he bypasses that hole and decides to bounce it left, where the blocking scheme, you can see it. You can see the double team, the lead with Eichenberg and Austin Jackson is to the right. So they're creating the wedge to the right. So that means that's a 2-hole run. If he just falls into the 2-hole, he gets 4 yards easy. And if he could run over a safety, number 20, who's standing there, maybe he scores. But let's be conservative and let's just say that he just falls into the hole. That's 4 yards easily. Of course, he doesn't do that. He bounces it left for whatever reason, gets the ball punched out. Again, it was a completely, disappointing effort. Not that they played badly. It was just they essentially played with no quarterbacks, and that's only one person's fault. Okay, and that's Chris Greer's fault for not having a capable quarterback to take over when Tua Tagovailoa is out. Now, here's the thing: some people have asked me, is Tua just going to magically fix all these problems? Yes, that's the short answer is yes. The problem is the damage is done. You wanted to go at least 2-2. You went 1-3 in his absence, and some of these losses are not some that you could come back from. The best thing you could say about this Colts loss is that it wasn't against the Patriots, so it doesn't count against your division record. That's the only thing you could say about it. But it's a terrible loss. Are you going to compete with the Colts for a playoff spot at the end of the year? No. That's the good news. But the bad news is you inflicted a bunch of losses on your team that you didn't need to inflict because A, your head coach can't evaluate quarterbacks past Tua Tagovailoa because make no mistake, Skylar Thompson is here and Mike White is not here because of Mike McDaniel. And your general manager, Chris Greer, is too passive where he just cannot tell his head coach, no, we're doing this. This is my build. This is my team. My name is going on this roster. We're going to go get a Joe Flacco. We're going to go get an Andy Dalton. We're going to trade for a Jimmy Garoppolo. But no, they did none of that. They kept Skylar Thompson. That threw away one game, and by extension, threw away the rest of them. Okay? Because you had to scramble with Tyler Huntley on 3 weeks' notice, and then Tyler Huntley was just absolutely terrible in this game. They give him very, very simple stuff to do. On OnlyFans, I posted my film study of the game, and man, very, very simple passing concepts. Wide open people. I'm talking about wide open people where you could see, like, forget Tua. Like, if Tua's playing in that game, it's a regular. We're bored to death in the fourth quarter, and they win the game 34-13 or something like that. Okay? But I'm saying you had Joe Flacco. You have Andy Dalton. You're probably up 2 touchdowns at the end of this game because there was wide open people in that game because they started off very nervous about defending Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And you could almost see it as the running game got more and more successful. They eased up. And when they eased up, they called a couple of man beaters and a couple of cover 2 beaters that, my God, did they beat them or not? They beat the hell out of them on those route combinations. It looked like they weren't ready for it. If that were any other quarterback, man, if that were Tua, they're very long completions. I counted 4 plays where they left about 120 to 150 yards of offense on those 4 plays, all pass plays. If it's any other quarterback, you're making those big plays and you're probably winning this game. But you don't have those other quarterbacks because of the things that I mentioned. So this goes right on Chris Greer. His passiveness in acquiring a backup quarterback absolutely cost this team and cost this team dearly. Where I always believe that you look at a schedule with every game that you blow, you got to go do something extraordinary. The problem is that this team hasn't done anything extraordinary in 2.5 years. So you're asking them to do something that they haven't done before. So what do I mean by that? Well, they're going to have to win a game that they're not favored to win. Here's the good news. They're favored to win in 8 of the last, I don't even know how many it is. What is it, 11 games left? They're favored in 8 of the 11, all right? So they're favored to go 10-7. That means that they win every game that they're favored in. But you know that they're going to stumble somewhere, right? So
Yeah,
that means that you got to pull one out somewhere. Can they beat Buffalo in Buffalo? Yeah,
No.
but
no.
you know,
No,
are they
can't.
going to do it? Is the problem? Are they going to do it? You know. So the good news is that a couple of games have gotten softer in recent weeks. Cleveland is a mess. The Rams are a mess. Those were games that we were expecting to be tough, and they're not tough anymore. But this goes right to Chris Greer. And I don't believe in when the season's over, and let's say, they go 10-7. They lose in the first round. Let's say they even win the first round of the playoffs. Let's paint the rosiest picture possible. They go 10-7. They beat, I don't know, some random team. They beat the Steelers in
For the
Pittsburgh.
wild card. Yeah.
Okay. They beat the Steelers in the wild card round or whatever, right? They move on to the divisional round. They lose. They play really well in the divisional round. You're going to point to Chris Greer and say, look, your failure in construction probably cost this team a division title and an opportunity to make a run at an AFC championship game. And somebody has to be held accountable for that. And I'm hoping that they're going to hold somebody accountable, because what's left of this build, because look, I completely disagree with a lot of fans. All right. Fans are mostly emotional and they're like, tear it all down, get rid of everybody. Okay. First of all, you never win by getting rid of good players. Like, the whole point is to get rid of your bad players and replace them with better players. Okay. So this notion, and I know where it comes from. It comes from Madden. People love that franchise mode in Madden, and they love tearing down a team and starting over and saying, oh, you see, I built it from scratch. No. When you have good young players, like I've seen people trade Achan. Why would you trade Achan? He was a third-round pick. So what? You going to trade him for a third-round pick and then use the third-round pick to try to find Devon Achan again? No, you already found him. You keep him. Trade Waddle. No, you found Waddle. You keep him. You can't trade Ramsey. Look, if the team was better, Ramsey would be a defensive player of the year candidate this year. Okay? He's having the best season for a cornerback in Dolphins history, period. All right? But at the end of the year, I think even in the rosiest of scenarios, I think the only way that he could say, hey, I was right, is if, I guess, they make the Super Bowl, or if they lose a close game in the AFC Championship game and home field didn't matter. But, we're talking about like really off the wall things that have to happen. But at the end of the year, the team is so far along that you could see what they need. What they need is somebody to put the finishing touches on this roster to make a serious run. Because if you just throw away a year because you didn't address QB2, then you're taking years away from this window, which will then close on you. So I would consider at season's end firing Chris Greer, even in the best case scenario, even everything goes well, because his failure to address QB2, and I don't care if it's Mike McDaniel that fought for it, it's your build. Your name is on the team. Put your foot down. Make a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. Make an offer to Russell Wilson. Look what the Steelers did. Steelers made an offer for Russell Wilson, got creative with his contract, and got him for nothing, for $1 million. That's something Miami could have done. But they didn't. Now you can say, oh yeah, but Russell Wilson was competing for a starting job. Okay, great. How about Andy Dalton? How about Joe Flacco? Most egregious was Joe Flacco's agent called the Dolphins, offering their services, and the Dolphins said no. Joe Flacco, his last 8 starts, is one of the best quarterbacks in all of football. Be a little forward looking. Talk to Sam Darnold. I understand that Sam Darnold got offered a job where he was probably going to be the placeholder for JJ McCarthy. So it's probably a better job than just backing up Tua. But still, have those conversations. There's no way you looked at this season and said Skylar Thompson is still the guy when we saw him after year 1. I saw him in training camp in year 2. I saw him in training camp in year 3. He never got any better. He was worse each and every year. You saw him playing in games. He's more injury prone than the starter. So, yeah, it's a completely disappointing game, because you almost feel like they don't deserve the loss, but in the end, they do deserve the loss, because it came from a roster build problem from Chris Greer. And when you try to play a game, any game against pretty much anybody, except maybe the Patriots, and actually in that game, Tyler Huntley played okay. He hit some passes, but you try to play a game without a quarterback, that's what's going to happen to you when you have those 2 turnovers. And think about it. They played that game without a quarterback. If they don't have those 2 turnovers, they wouldn't go away. So they almost survived, but they didn't. And there has to be some accountability. And like I said, the great thing about this is that the build is far enough along that a new GM comes in here and he knows precisely what he has to do. He has to just work around the edges. It's not about building a big part of the roster. It's about just tinkering with what's on the team already, in the starting 22 and working on the depth. And of course, those high leverage positions like quarterback 2 and your backups on the offensive line, your guards. I came away completely disappointed with this team because it was a failure that goes right to the general manager. Like, that's a loss that goes right on the general manager. People were blaming Raheem Mostert. Yeah, his fumble was huge. Alec Ingles' fumble, that was massive. Jason Sanders can't be counted on from 50 plus more. McDaniel, of course. First of all, you should be going for it there on 4th and 1 instead of kicking a 54-yard field goal. But all of those things, that's why you lost on Sunday. But the major overarching reason why you lost is because your general manager completely ignored quarterback 2, and it ended up costing you early in the season. And that's the reason you're 2-4.
I'm not gonna. Everything you said, I can't help but agree with it, because here's the reality of the situation, and I know that it's easy to say it's all Chris Greer's fault, but I'm gonna put some of this on McDaniel too, because McDaniel has a lot of say in how that final roster ends up looking, and as you mentioned, Chris Greer doesn't have the balls to be able to go to the head coach that he's working with and say, I'm taking command and you are going to do this thing whether you like it or not. And Mike McDaniel made it a point, apparently, to say that, you know what? No, I don't want Joe Flacco. Because if what you're saying is that his agent called the Dolphins and said, we want to play for Miami, that means that Greer went to McDaniel and said, would you like Joe Flacco? And McDaniel probably said no. So part of it is Greer, of course, but you can also pin that on McDaniel to some extent, because he's the one who gets to choose the opportunity to have a veteran backup as his fallback plan. And he chose instead to go with Skylar Thompson for some unbelievably stupid reason. I was hoping that Skylar would develop, but during your training camp reports, it seems like he's gone backwards every single year that he's been here, which is weird because it almost feels like the more they learn the offense, the dumber they get. It's very weird. Like, the more they learn it, it's the worse they get at it. Tua is the only exception to the rule. He knows the offense inside and out, and he looks good in it. But everybody else, the longer they're here learning, the worse they get. I don't understand that. I don't understand what's going on.
It's not only that. Every single quarterback that comes through here, because look, we were having this conversation on the podcast, and they're like, "Oh, it's the quality of the quarterbacks." And I'm like, "Look, when Teddy Bridgewater was brought here, nobody said that he was a bad quarterback. Everybody said Miami now has one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL." I watched Teddy Bridgewater play. He was absolutely terrible in 2022. Okay? Forget about getting knocked out after one play against the Jets. Okay? Go back and look at the game where he threw a ton of yards against the Vikings. Okay? There's a reason he threw for so many yards and they had no points. There was a reason why they couldn't get past the 30-yard line and they were kicking field goals. But forget that one. The season, he essentially threw the season, almost tried to throw the season away against New England in a game where McDaniel did that thing where he said, look, we're not fucking this up. We're winning this game. We're running out the clock from the first quarter. If we win this game 3-0, that's fine. He throws one of the worst pick sixes that you'll ever see. And the team just could not overcome that pick six in that game. And that's what cost them that game and almost cost them a playoff berth. Okay. And then, of course, they rolled out the same game plan of, just get the hell out of the way and try to win it with defense and running the football with Skylar Thompson. And it worked against the Jets. But they would have clinched a week earlier. All right. So, yeah, it's not that, they picked the wrong quarterback. It's that they all suck. If it's not Tua running this offense, they all suck. So they can't evaluate any of these quarterbacks in this system. They just can't do it.
But and you have to wonder, what is it about this system? Is Tua just so much of a savant, as Mike McDaniel puts it, that nobody else can understand what's happening on the field except for him? If that is the case, then it really doesn't matter who the backup is. It's not going to work. We could have gotten Joe Flacco and it wouldn't have worked. We could have gotten Andy Dalton and it wouldn't have worked, because the mindset that we're having here, you use Teddy Bridgewater and it's a perfect example. Bridgewater and Tua are supposed to be two kind of like Bridgewater is supposed to be Tua light. At least that's how he was projected to be. That's how we were assuming he would be. They're both more cerebral. They're more finesse. They're not physically gifted quarterbacks, but they were able to carve a niche for themselves and be able to do something with that skill set. Bridgewater was a starter once upon a time, and he was pretty okay. And he was a really good backup for the Saints once upon a time. And he shows up in Miami, and just it all falls apart, all of it. And Mike White, he's like this gamer. He took Zach Wilson to the bench. He ended up winning a couple games. Everybody's wearing Mike White t-shirts in the locker room. Everybody loves him. He gets to Miami, absolutely nothing. And so you have to wonder, what is it about this system, specifically this system, that it doesn't matter who the backup seems to be. The more they learn it, and that's my key point here. The more they learn, the worse they get. Skylar Thompson, when it was just run the ball and just find the guy who happens to be standing wide open over here, he was great. Well, great, relatively speaking, for what a third string quarterback would have been. But the longer it dragged on, the worse he got. Usually, when you have more time in an offense, you get better at it, not the opposite.
Here's the thing, though. Everybody likes to talk about Tua getting the ball out quickly, within 2 seconds, what have you. To be honest, a quick release starts with a quick mind. The release is as quick as it is because Tua knows where he's going with the football. Sometimes before the play is snapped, and sometimes that can be a little bit problematic. But Tua knows where the football is going, and he knows when to get it there, and he usually makes that decision pretty much off the snap. And when you're running a timing-based offense like this, you almost need the quarterbacks to be able to do something like that. And so what I think happens with a lot of these guys is they start thinking, and that's the problem. The more they learn it, they start thinking. And a lot of the offense for Tua is, okay, I see the defense pre-snap. I see what they do off the snap. Boom, read, react. And these guys are read, think, react too late. And in this offense, that yields you disastrous results because it's so precise with the timing. And I think that's where you have the problems with the Skylar Thompson holding the ball forever. And some of these other issues is because the routes are designed to get open relatively quickly. And they do stay open for a good portion of the time. But then it gets to a point where the route's so far downfield, the quarterbacks that you do have, aside from Tua, might not trust their arms to get it there, or may not trust their accuracy to be able to get it to the to where the wide receiver is. It's because this offense is as quick. This offense moves at the speed of Tua, and these guys they can't keep up. And Mike McDaniel has this thing about him where I found it pretty funny. He did mention they were talking about during the game. You know, they said Mike McDaniel was talking to Tyler Huntley, and he said, "Well, don't try to be Tua," right? It's interesting to me that Mike McDaniel has almost two modes, and they're polar opposites. One is, okay, we're going to run the offense. The offense is the offense. Essentially, go out there and be Tua. The second mode is, okay, we're going to be as conservative as possible. We're not screwing this up. We're going to run the football. Play it safe. We've got the training wheels on. There's you don't have to do anything at quarterback now. And he just hasn't been able to kind of moderate that and find any kind of middle ground there. I thought that he was doing that against New England. I thought that was kind of the best iteration of that we've seen. But it's this offense is built around not just Tua, but Tua's best ability. And that's a problem for other quarterbacks because they can't process as quickly. And so they can't get the ball out as quickly. And so the timing is off. And when the timing is off, all of a sudden the quarterback's sitting there and he's holding the ball way too long and he's getting hit. Or he's throwing the ball way later than he should and the route is getting jumped. That's the biggest at least from what I can tell, that's the biggest obstacle as far as the backup quarterbacks are concerned, is they can't process as quickly and they start to think. And in this offense, when you think too much, you're done.
All right, I want to go ahead and I'm going to follow up with some more thoughts on this. But before that, and really quick, just have to go ahead and mention we do have another sponsor for the show. It is Underdog Fantasy. Here we go.
Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and 2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. Make Mondays and Thursdays much more interesting. Trust me when I tell you this. Underdog is the best place to cash in on all your takes this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones are ice cold? Make your entries in just a few taps and turn your sports opinions into real money. Join over 5 million fans that are already playing on Underdog. With their Champs game, you can win money by making entries with your favorite players. Just head on over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with the promo code 3YARDS. That's the number 3 yards, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code 3 yards to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 19 plus in Alabama, New England, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369.
All right. So I want to go ahead and quickly follow up on one other thing, because we were saying it jokingly a little bit several weeks ago, and we had talked about, oh, why don't we just go get this guy? And part of me feels like if we, let's say we just pulled the trigger on it. Let's say we did it. Part of me thinks that, yeah, the results will be a little bit better, but only marginally so. And the reason why is because of where this person's skill set lies. If Miami had gone out and gotten Ryan Tannehill, in all seriousness, based on how this offense is supposed to function, of all the veteran quarterbacks you could go out and get, Tannehill is probably the worst option for that, because Tua's offense functions on throwing to spots, and the guy gets there when he's supposed to be there. Tannehill doesn't throw to spots. He can't throw to spots. We've already proven he can't throw to spots. Tannehill throws at people. And if he doesn't see the person, he's not going to throw it. That has never changed. So if the Dolphins had gone and gotten out Ryan Tannehill, we would have spent $10 million for nothing, in my honest opinion at this point. Because the more that I think about it and the more that I watch all these other quarterbacks come in here and try to run this thing, Tannehill is not a timing quarterback. He never has been his whole career. He just can't do that. He can't do it. So if they had gotten Tannehill, we would just be yelling at Chris Grier for, why did you give $10 million to Tannehill when he can't run this offense? That's my opinion on it. If you are going to go and get a veteran quarterback, I honestly don't know who the right answer is. Of all the people that I have seen, I guess Flacco is the one that I'm hoping they go, because he's on a 1-year deal in Indy. And just for the sake of making sure that all the facts are on the table, currently Flacco he signed a 1-year, $4.5 million contract with the Colts this year. He's going to be 40 next year. So how much longer is he going to play? We'll see. Let's see if they make the phone call. if Flacco's agent is like, hey,
can we take a second to acknowledge that Joe Flacco's not even getting Mike White money?
That's kind of scary, isn't it? Like $4.5 million for Flacco. And he had himself a renaissance at age 38 in Cleveland of all places. Yeah, I don't know, man. So now this boils down to the Tua situation. Tua went in that press conference the other day, and you could tell he was sick and tired of hearing about his concussions. And to some extent, Alf, I know that CK was in the OnlyFans talking about how this may not be a good look for them just because of how standoffish and how aggressive he was with the whole discussion. But from a Tua perspective, I totally get where he's coming from because he's not deaf. He can see and he can hear just fine of all the talk that's going on. There are other players. We've pointed it out. There are other players who are getting concussions almost regularly, and they don't have nearly the amount of scrutiny that he has. Josh Allen was brushed off as not even being a concussion. It never happened. He hurt his ankle somehow by smacking his head against the turf. I don't know how that happened, but whatever. The guy Lane Johnson from the Eagles barfing on the sidelines, and he came back a week later. No problem. No issue. It's only because it's Tua. And I think Tua knows that it's only because it's Tua. And I feel like that's where his frustration lies, is that he is being singled out by the media at large. And should we care what the national media has to say? No. I think if anything has been proven at this point is that we shouldn't give a flying you-know-what about whether or not national media, local media has anything to say. Use your own eyeballs and make your own conclusions at this point, ladies and gentlemen. That's a general rule for everything now, not just sports. But the main reality here is that Tua is sick to death of being scrutinized. He's tired of being put under a microscope. And whether it's fair or not, he's going to continue to have to deal with that reality. And the only thing I don't understand is why. Why is it that he is the only one who gets this kind of torment? Is it because it happened on prime time every time he got hurt? Maybe that's it. Maybe he is the poster child for CTE. And every other player who's gotten hurt since then, concussions, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like, name me the last time there was some kind of outrage over a concussion for any player besides Tua. You can't name them. You can't. Like, there have been players getting concussions, but is anybody like, this person is in danger, he needs to retire for the sake of his family, his children, why is he doing this to himself? Nobody's doing that for anybody, just him.
Who was that one? I feel like there was like a mini thing with that one guy on the Colts. Who was that one guy on the Colts a couple years back where he tried to go to the opposite sideline and then the Colts or the Patriots, I mean, he tried to go to the opposite sideline and then they put him back in the game. There was like a mini outrage about that, but that was like a day and then it kind of passed over.
Alf, does that ring a bell to you? Is Alf even there?
What do you mean?
What Eric is alluding to, that there was a Patriots player who went put back in, and they were like, how could they do that if he was concussed or something along those lines?
Yeah, he tried going to the opposite sideline, and then he was in the game like a few plays later.
Well, it happened to Devontae Parker.
Oh,
yes,
Parker.
It was Devontae Parker. That's right.
Go figure.
Yeah. But no, the thing about Tua that I will say that is this: he had a grade 4 concussion, which is when you lose consciousness completely, right? And usually when you get those, it's like an automatic 30 days. Here's the thing. Putting him on IR was 46 days. So did you throw away an extra game just to make it a clean IR visit or save Tua from himself? Because you didn't want to have Tua bugging you for 3 weeks? Maybe that's what they did. And if that's what they did, then that's normal because it is 30 days. And that's that. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of team doctors, including some from teams down here. Okay. And they all tell me the same thing. Grade 4 concussion, that's 30 days automatically. No matter what you do, it's 30 days. So he was going to be out for 30 days. So I don't know. Did they cost themselves an extra day? I don't know. But is he treated differently? Well, the national conversation is very, very different around him and always has been around him.
So
It
but
seems
now
like it always felt like to me from very, very early on, like there's a lot of people invested in him failing. And if it takes him getting injured to being out for him to fail, then that's fine by them. And I don't know why that is, but it just is. And it's in the national media. It's even in our own fan base. But it is like that. It's that way. And to say that he's polarizing, he's not polarizing. There's just polarizing is that there's a lot of varying opinions. There really isn't a bunch of varying opinions. The vast majority of Dolphin fans support Tua Tagovailoa. There is evidence to suggest this. Okay, I am privy to polling that all the teams get and that the major networks get, and it's in excess of 3/4 of the fan base support Tua Tagovailoa and love Tua Tagovailoa. It's a very tiny, tiny, insignificant portion of the local fan base that doesn't like him. And nationally, it's also an insignificant portion of the national fan base. But they're the ones who get all the clicks and all the sound and all the noise. And it's I don't know if you saw his press conference, but it's definitely changed him. You know, he's a completely different person now.
yeah, he's pissed. He's jaded. He hates everybody around him at this point because he feels like they're out to get him.
He's got to be careful because the next thing that they're gonna say is, "Oh boy, his personality suddenly changed after he hit his head."
Yeah, right. Like all the concussions have given him brain damage, and he's like one more concussion away from becoming the Joker, and he's gonna start murdering people.
Oh God, no, but you know, I think he's been feeling that way a long time, and I think that it's been evident that he's been feeling that way a long time. And I hope, and I have a suspicion that this is the case. And I know that the helmet thing, he's wearing the safest helmet for quarterbacks, statistically speaking, and I understand that. I just hope that the decision not to wear the Guardian cap didn't come from I'm not going to bend to what people want, almost in kind of like I'm going to take a stand on this kind of thing. I hope that's not what it is. It kind of sounds like that might be what it is, like you're not going to tell me what to do kind of thing, which I understand from his perspective because he's been told what to do by a lot of people throughout this whole process. But there is a time when you cut off your nose to spite your face a little bit. I don't know if that's one of those times because it's to be determined as to how much the Guardian caps actually benefit. But I just hope that wasn't the decision-making process there. The other thing is, I think Tua came out as forcefully as he did, in part to kind of galvanize the locker room, because I think that he understands at 2-4, the season is slipping away. And the great ones, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, they invent things to feel slighted by. And Tua's got an advantage here because he doesn't have to invent anything. He's got plenty of material here. And I think he sees an opportunity to say, okay, I can get these guys to rally around me, and I'm going to be defiant. And we're going to be defiant in the face of this 2-4, and we're going to go save this season. And everyone's going to have to shut up about it. And I hope that's the case. I really do.
He could do it. And this is where it comes down to, can Tua save the season? I personally feel like the fact that Tua comes back means that there's hope. Starting with this Cardinals game, Kyler Murray, Tua's already beaten Kyler Murray once. Now, the Cardinals do have a lot more weapons this time around. Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, there's some pedigree there. Zay Jones.
I disagree. That Cardinal team that the Dolphins beat in 2020 was absolutely loaded. Go back and look at that team. That was actually a playoff team. This Cardinal team is not.
You don't like the 2024 Cardinals?
They're fine.
Fitzgerald, Hopkins, yeah, they got a lot. Okay, fair enough. Like they had some good bodies.
Yeah, I think
sure.
DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, and Christian Kirk is a pretty good group.
Yep. So, I guess then, yeah. I mean, the Cardinals again. Like I wouldn't call them world beaters by chance, but at this point, the Dolphins can't afford to underestimate anybody. They really can't. So, this is where
didn't that Cardinal team also have Kenyon Drake?
It did.
Yeah, it had Kenyon Drake. Let me see who else do they have.
They no, they had a
They
lot
had Chase
of
Edmonds. They had Chase Edmonds on that team. Yeah, they were loaded. Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins, Andy Isabella, Christian Kirk. Yeah, they were pretty loaded. Yeah.
Johnny Be Good is in the chat saying that Kyler Murray is afraid to throw downfield. Well, I mean, I guess that's a good thing. It'll make it
he's having issues with his receiving core right now. But that's not where this game is going to be won or lost, because you got to trust your defense at this point. Like, the defense is really, really good this year. They're number one on third downs. The only thing they're not getting this year is sacks. That's the only thing that the Dolphins are not getting sacks this year. But they are getting pressures, and they're getting off the field on third down, and that's how you win in this league, right? They're the number one pass defense in the NFL. This game's going to be won or lost on how you play offense with your quarterback back. And the Cardinals are absolutely horrid on defense. Although they just played great against the Chargers, but that could say a thing or two about the Chargers.
It could say a thing or two about Justin Herbert.
Yes.
Here we go again. Who should the Dolphins have drafted? Like, it doesn't matter at this point. Herbert's bad. Like, I don't even know how the argument can be made that Herbert's well, okay, let me rephrase. He's not bad. He's just like, he's not getting as much support as maybe he should be. Like, he just lost Austin Eckler, and mind you, the Commanders aren't really doing a whole lot with him, so make of that what you will.
I mean, you could honestly you can make an argument there that they improved with J.K. Dobbins this year, the way that he's played so far.
I don't know.
From the last year of Austin Eckler, the first 4 years of Austin Eckler were fantastic. He was
the first 4 years of Austin Eckler. He was the Chargers offense.
He lost the step towards the end.
That's what happens when you are the whole offense. The entire offense is Austin Eckler.
Absolutely.
Like, the only guy who can do that is Derrick Henry. My God, man. Listen, if Derrick Henry ever becomes a free agent again, I don't care if the man is 38 years old. Get him. Find a way to bring him in here.
The problem with that is, and I'm not here to negate the effect of Derrick Henry, but that is the best possible marriage of offense and running back that you can have, because they just benefit each other so perfectly that, Derrick Henry would be a 1,400 yard runner anywhere else. He might run for 2,000 in Baltimore. It's insane, that offense right now. Again,
man is a living bulldozer.
He is, absolutely. But Baltimore forces teams, because you have to respect Zay Flowers downfield, because you have to respect Lamar Jackson passing the ball downfield. And, Derrick Henry has made life a lot easier on Lamar Jackson too. But again, that's one of those symbiotic things where it's just a perfect marriage in Baltimore right now. It's crazy.
Well, you know what, though, Eric? I personally feel like, listen, if Derrick Henry were in Miami, it would have been listed as a perfect marriage here too. Because because right now, what are teams doing? They're cheating up. They're making it so that they always have the two high safeties back there to make sure that Tyreek and Waddle can't get open deep. You throw Derrick Henry in the mix, and all of a sudden, that doesn't seem like a good strategy. Because unless you want Derrick Henry running 200 yards on you every game, you're going to have to do something to stop him. And that opens the floodgates. Like, Derrick Henry, I seriously, I wish they would have pulled the trigger on him. Like, the talk about Like I'm blanking on his name now. That's why it's so Dalvin Cook. The Dalvin Cook talk was more about the name than it was even about the results. It was more about teams will respect him because he's Dalvin Cook. They remember Dalvin Cook. They remember that he could do amazing things in Minnesota, and they'll have to respect him because that's who he is. That was the kind of illusion we were hoping that we could get him for cheap in Miami. It didn't happen, and it was to our benefit because Dalvin Cook, the illusion would have worn off really quick because he's gone. But on a team, I don't think he is. So he's just bye. If Derrick Henry were a Dolphin, we would not be here right now. We would have just run the man into the ground, and we would probably be undefeated or something. Because if you have Derrick Henry, you don't even need Tua to do that much. That's the honest truth about it. Lamar Jackson doesn't have to do that much anymore because you just have Derrick Henry. That's the reason why Ryan Tannehill looks so much better in Tennessee is because of Derrick Henry, not because Tannehill. Like Derrick Henry makes any quarterback, that would include Tua, incredible just by default because teams have to invest into finding a way to stop him from running over you. Even if it's not Derrick Henry, and as much as I'm loving what I'm seeing from Jalen Wright, if the Dolphins ever go out and find another running back again, I want a guy who is his job, his designation is bulldozer. Just run people over. You don't have to be the fastest guy out there. Just be so strong that you can get by people just based on that alone.
Although to be fair, if you watch Derrick Henry play, he's doing it with his speed.
He is doing it with some speed too. Yeah. That's why he's perfect. He's perfect. He's the perfect running back.
Like he's not running any. He's not really like he's at the age where he's relying on whatever physical gifts he has left. He is not about running people over now, at this stage of his career, because he knows that he doesn't have many of those collisions left in him. So he's using his speed. Like he's running away from people now.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna. We'll focus real quick on the Cardinals. So we only got a few minutes left, but if there is any hope for this season, it starts on Sunday. It starts on Sunday. The Cardinals are going to be coming to Hard Rock. It's Tua's return to Miami. I'm hoping that the fans will come out and greet him warmly, and Tua will take all that anger, all that frustration, all that inner rage that's been boiling up inside him, and he just lights it up against a team that, like, for all the talk about, I hear what you're saying, Alf, but they do still have some good bodies on defense that they need to watch out for. Again, cannot afford to take anybody for granted at this stage of the season. Nobody. Treat everybody with the utmost respect. Treat everybody and understand that at any moment somebody could do something, because you alluded to it. There's no margin for error. You can't afford to make a mistake right now in this offense, because any mistake is like stabbing yourself in the heart. You're done. You can't make mistakes. So they need to find a way to clean this up. And if Tua is the answer to that, even if the offense only scores 20 points a game, which is a far cry from what they were doing 2 years ago, with the way the defense has been playing this year, that's more than enough.
You know, I almost disagree with the whole you can't make mistakes mentality. I want Tua to go out there with the idea that the Dolphins are already 2-4, making the playoffs at this point. But realistically, they almost have to play perfect football down the stretch here. So go out there and be a gunslinger, man. Take the shots. Be aggressive. Now, don't be aggressive with your body. Don't go running headfirst into people. But you see the shot downfield, don't hesitate. You gotta seize those opportunities when you get them. And ultimately, is Tua good enough to save the Dolphins? The answer is yes. But the answer is Tua at his A game is good enough to save the Miami Dolphins. Tua can't have a C+ game down the stretch here. if the Dolphins are going to go anywhere this season. It has to be MVP level Tua the rest of the way out here, if that's what's going to happen. And I almost feel for Mike McDaniel in a way here, because this is really a no-win situation for him down the stretch. Because if Tua plays well and the offense plays well, it's well, Mike McDaniel didn't do anything. It's all Tua. And if the offense plays badly, it's, oh, well, Mike McDaniel can't even fix this with Tua at the helm. So he's in a no-win situation at the moment. But I think, to an extent, him and Chris Greer have kind of put themselves in the situations that they're in. But yeah, Tua's going to have to play really almost perfect football. And Tua plays his best football when he's playing quarterback fearlessly. And I mean that throwing the football. Again, not advocating for him to try to run people over. But when he's not afraid to take those shots downfield, because that's when he gets into a rhythm, and that's when he starts to really feel it. And that's the kind of, like, they need the Tua from the first half against Green Bay before he suffered his final concussion in 2022. I still posit that was the best half of quarterback I've ever seen Tua play, was that first half against Green Bay, minus the one interception that he did throw. They need that guy that's not afraid to take shots downfield, because at this point you have almost nothing to lose.
Alf, any final thoughts before we call it a night?
Yeah, I would say they've scored in Tua's absence, 40 points? Right? That's what they've scored in all these games since Tua left. 40 points total. It would not surprise me if Tua matched that on Sunday.
I would be really impressed. I'm not going to hold out that much hope. That's a lot of points. So, especially for an offense that's been floundering the way that it is. And to everybody's point who's been talking in the chat for the past few weeks, even when Tua was in there, it's not like the offense was firing on all cylinders. You could feel that something was off. Like, that's even with Tua there. So, what was that thing? I don't know. Maybe they'll have a chance to work it out against Arizona. Everybody, thank you all so much for listening. We really appreciate you being with us here on the show. Once again, you can go to discord.gg/onlyfins, only $3 a month to get on the 3 yards per carry Discord server and talk with some of the best Dolphins minds on the internet that you will ever find. You can go to the jerseys305.com, use the promo code 5. You get 10% off your order when you go ahead and use that promo code on your next order. And of course, thompsoncigar.com, use the promo code 3 yards and get 20% off your entire order over $75. That's going to be it. We will see you all next week, and hopefully we'll be talking about a Miami Dolphins victory in a way that Tua will make us all proud. Good night, everybody.